Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of Astrology with Jeffrey Bryan. Today, I'm going to do a video on the history of the United States charts. So there's probably like 19 or 20 charts. There's charts for the Declaration of Independence, the establishment of when the first president was sworn in. There's all kinds of charts, and I'm going to take you through many of the charts, not all of them. There's just too many to go through. But I think it's important to understand all the historical data and knowledge compiled to figure out when the United States was actually established as a government. Many people throughout the years have argued, is it July 4th, 1776? Was it 2 days before that? Was it a day before that? Was it when the first president of the United States was sworn into office, and many other things? So there's a book, here it is, the Book of World Horoscopes by Nicholas Campion. And this is a book of the charts of all the world, every country in the world. This guy went and compiled historical evidence showing when the countries began, when they diminished, when a new country started up, when wars took place, and what happened when they stopped, so we can follow the astrology with the history to better understand how astrology works with governments, wars, industry, stock markets, all these things, so we can verify actual proof when we're speaking of a certain planet in a house or a degree or whatever we're looking at. So I took a lot of my information out of this book, pretty much all of it, so I could share it with you, because he breaks down everything. He quotes authors and magazines, newspapers. He's dialed in, and so his life work is really a masterpiece, and I encourage everyone to get the book if they don't already have it. So I'm going to share my screen, bring this up. All right, the history of the United States chart by Astrology with Jeffrey Bryan. Here we go. So this is July 2nd, 1776, the vote for independence. The birthday of the United States is celebrated on July 4th, but in fact, the crucial vote for independence was taken on July 2nd, 1776. And the constitutional historians such as Carl Becker and Hugh Brogan never tire of pointing this out. Contemporary press reports there were no doubt that this was so. A report of 3rd July stated that yesterday the Continental Congress declared the United States colonies are free and independent states. The declaration in question was entirely unambiguous and read that the United States colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. Even the participants in the drama regarded this vote as the vital event in both political and symbolic terms. And in a letter on the 3rd of July, 1776, John Adams stated as much to his wife. Adams was the seconder of the motion declaring independence and was from 1797 to 1801 the second president of the USA. In his letter, he wrote that yesterday, which was the 2nd of July, the greatest question was decided, whichever was debated in America. A resolution was passed without one dissenting colony, that these United States colonies are free and independent states. In what seems to be a second letter, Adams continues, the second day of July 1776 will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. So chart 265 is set for Philadelphia on July 1776. But the question of the time is a separate issue. And this is the chart of the 2nd of July, 1776, 2 days before what we call Independence Day, or most people consider is the real American chart. So here we have Libra as the ascendant, and we have the sun in the 10th house in Cancer. And the moon is down here in the 4th house in Capricorn. So now we're going to move on to the next. So July 4, 1776, the wording of the Declaration of Independence agreed. 4 July, celebrated as American Independence Day, was the date 1776 when the vote was taken to agree the wording of the Declaration of Independence. 12 states voted in favor. New York, whose delegate John Dickinson was absent, abstained. In spite of Adams' expectations, the 2nd of July was forgotten, and the signing of the Declaration of Independence on 4 July is remembered as the birthday of the USA, perhaps because the Declaration's lofty tones caught the popular imagination. The plain fact is that in 1776, the 4th of July was empathetically not regarded as an important day. As David McCullough writes, indeed, to all appearances, nothing happened in Congress on July 4th, 1776. Adams, who had responded with such depth of feeling to the events of July 2nd, recorded not a word of July 4th. Of Jefferson's day, it is known only that he took time off to shop for ladies' gloves and a new thermometer that he purchased at John Spearhawk's London bookshop for a handsome £3 15 shillings. It's very interesting that they don't account for this day at all. What happened, McCullough points out, was that as soon as the wording of the Declaration was agreed, copies were printed on 5 July. Delegates started sending them to friends, and on 6 July, the Pennsylvania Evening Post carried the full text on its first page. It seems that because the Declaration was so much more than a mere Declaration of Independence and contained a wonderfully poetic summary of Enlightenment views of human freedom. Later, generations mythologized the day on which the wording was agreed and forgot the day on which the vote was important, the vote was taken, and which the actual participants regarded as most important. So what was the Declaration of Independence? Adam explains its purpose vividly in a letter to his wife on the 3rd of July. You will see in a few days a declaration setting forth the causes which have impelled us to this mighty revolution and the reasons which will justify it in the sight of God and man. It must be borne in mind that in an age when monarchy was still believed to be the natural and even divinely ordained form of government, a step which to us today seems natural, required justification, especially in the sight of God. Still holds true to this day. So this is evidence for, now this is evidence for the same chart, but as an early morning chart for the rising sign of Gemini. So one of the most popular horoscopes is set for about 2:15 a.m. with Gemini rising. Indeed, from my experience, at least half of American astrologers who express an opinion, perhaps more, regard this unequivocally as the horoscope of the United States. The exact time given varies. For example, one speculative map is set for 2:17 a.m. the 4th of July, 1776. However, to date, no historical evidence has been produced to justify any Gemini rising chart. Indeed, all the documentary evidence contradicts the claim that anything significant occurred at this time, and there are no surviving official or personal accounts of the events of the 4th of July, 1776, which support the early AM chart. However, if you read through his book, you'll see that there was an astrologer, and I think somebody else that talked to somebody that had been there, and they said that it happened early in the AM. Whether that's 2:17 in the morning or like 8 or 9 in the morning, 5 in the morning, nobody knows. So I noticed that looking online and going through what people say, I don't see anybody using this chart. Almost everyone uses the Sibley chart for some reason, and I don't believe that to be the correct chart. But I'm going to let the viewer, you guys, decide for yourself. Here is the chart that Nicholas Campion said half of astrologers use. So this is the chart for July 4th, 1776 at 2:17 a.m. in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So here we see that Gemini is the rising sign. It's interesting that a lot of the historical astrologers use this Uranus with what was happening in history at the time to believe this to be the chart. And here we have the moon in Aquarius, the 10th house. Interesting, Pluto is in Capricorn here at 27 degrees, 9th house. And the sun down here is at 12 degrees, Cancer, 2nd house. We'll see later that in the Sibley chart, Pluto's down here where the sun is in the 2nd house. So moving on to the Sibley chart. The evidence for a late afternoon agreement leads toward acceptance of the first published chart for the USA, the so-called Sibley chart, which has Sagittarius rising. This horoscope was originally published in 1778, only 11 years after the signing of the Declaration, 5 years after the end of the War of Independence, and 2 years before George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States. So here we have a chart. Oh, let's move on before we get into that. Ebenezer Sibley, the astrologer who calculated the horoscope, was a Freemason, and in the 1780s was a member of the lodges, first in Portsmouth and then in Bristol, two cities which intimate trading connections with the USA. On this basis, Michael Begent has presented a persuasive case that Sibley was excellently placed to receive an account of the time of the Declaration was signed from those Freemasons in the USA, including Washington, Franklin, and Hancock, who were responsible for the creation of the new state. I think it's important to note that this information is coming from a Freemason back then, who they knew a lot about astrology and esoterics, as we know. Sibley's horoscope may not be a national horoscope in the modern sense, set for a precisely timed event, but is entirely consistent with the medieval tradition, and the chart is therefore presented here, not as a horoscope for the Declaration of Independence, but as a horoscope which signifies the Declaration of Independence. So here is the Sibley chart that I find most modern astrologers today use when they're writing. So for the viewers out there, whenever you see someone talking about the United States chart, unless they specify otherwise, this is what they're usually using. So here we see the sun in Cancer in the 7th house. We have Pluto, which we have a Pluto return going on right now, if this is the chart. So that's very significant. I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So Pluto here in 27 degrees Capricorn, this has the Sagittarius rising. And here we see this is the July 4th, 1776. So Independence Day, 1776 at 5:10 p.m. So now we move on to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So we're moving through history here from the beginning of the start of this I'm figuring out a chart for America, and we'll move all the way to the end. So the formal signing of the Declaration of Independence by the state's delegates took place on 2 August 1776. This was neither reported at the time nor regarded as significant. As McCullough wrote, to judge by what was in the newspapers and the correspondence of the delegates, the signing never took place. That's pretty interesting. So now we're going to move on to the first salute. From the 4th July, the 13 colonies regarded themselves as 13 independent states, linked through the single institution of the Continental Congress. The states were, however, lacking in international recognition. This was first received unofficially on the 16th of November, 1776, when the governor of the Dutch-controlled island of St. Eustatius saluted the gun-running brig Andrew Doria, which was flying the flag of the Continental Congress. Barbara Tuchman described this as the largest event of the century, the entry into the Society of Nations of a new state destined to change the direction of history. So the first salute was a big day. Is this the United States chart? I don't know, but here it is, November 16th, 1776, noon in St. Eustatia. So here we have the ascendant in Aquarius. Pluto also always, it's going to be in Capricorn every time until I think it's in Capricorn every time. We move to the sun in Scorpio, 9th house. So we have a Scorpio sun in this chart with an Aquarius ascendant. And we also have a Capricorn moon. So now we're going to move on to the Confederation charts. So the first attempt at cooperative government between the states was contained in the first Constitution, the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, which were submitted for debate on 12 July 1776, just 4 days after the Proclamation of Independence, adopted on 15 November 1777, and ratified and implemented on 1 March 1781 in Philadelphia. The horoscope for this date has been advocated in recent years by David Stoll, who points out quite correctly that when the 13 colonies declared their independence, they did so as 13 individual states, not one country. In support of his case, he cites John Rogers, a personal aide to George Washington, who wrote that, again, the formation and completion of the social compact among these states, which is usually styled the Confederation, is about the instance of the great things or God has done for us. This is that which gives the U.S. a national existence and character. By this event, the 13 United States became one people. The journals of the Continental Congress for the 15th November 1777 clearly set out the day's proceedings. Congress opened at 10 a.m. and dealt with 2 items of routine business. A memorial from Edmund West read and referred to the Executive Council of Pennsylvania, and a decision to send a copy of a letter from George Washington concerning military provisions to several states. The third business, which must have been reached by 10:30 a.m., was introduced as follows: a copy of the Confederation being made out, and sundry small amendments made in the diction without altering its sense. The same was agreed to as is follows. The printed text is then given, occupying about 20 pages. Motions were then discussed from New York and Connecticut. The only other direct indication of time given in the journals is that after proving the Confederal Constitution, Congress then adjourned until 4 p.m. We have no idea how long they adjourned for. This would have been the delegates' dinner break, but it could have lasted 2 or 3 hours. In addition, as on the 4th of July, 1776, the journals represent not a verbatim account of the day's proceedings, but a later summary. While it is clearly stated that the Constitution was agreed following the few amendments, we later read of the motions from New York and Connecticut. Were these discussed before or after the agreement was reached? Was the entire text read out? And if so, did that take place before or after the agreement was reached? This is undoubtedly an important moment in the USA's constitutional development. However, even though the 13 states had no legally binding formal constitutional ties prior to the Confederal Constitution, they had already entered into the informal confederal structure, which enabled them to declare independence at the same time and cooperate in the war against Britain. The Confederal Constitution therefore represented not something new, but a step along an established road. In addition, Article 2 expressly stated that each state retained its sovereignty, freedom, and independence. This was therefore a marriage of convenience between 13 states who were prepared to cooperate in foreign policies, but in precious little else. The Confederation was a failure and was replaced in 1787 by the Federation. The later attempt to return to Confederation resulted in the Civil War. So here is the the USA Confederation chart, November 15th, 1777 at noon. So here we have again an Aquarius rising sign, Pluto 12th house in Capricorn, the Sun Scorpio, 9th house, Moon down here in Gemini, 4th. So let's move. See Plastus. This chart has duplicated and intercepted signs, so which means one of the houses does not sit on a cusp. Let's see. De facto independence. De facto independence was achieved by the surrender of the British at Yorktown at about 10 a.m. on October 17, 1781. The United States victory was formalized by the truce signed between British General Cornwallis and George Washington at Yorktown on the 19th of October, 1781 at 11 a.m. The British troops then laid down their arms at about 1 p.m. So here's the Yorktown chart. This is a Sagittarius rising sign. Here we see the sun and moon in Libra. And Pluto is in Aquarius in this chart. Interesting there. Uranus over here in Cancer. Jour de independence. Full legal independence was attained by the preliminary Treaty of Paris on the 30th of November, 1782, which became complete on the 3rd of September, 1783. Crum and Grant give 10 a.m. for the final treaty, but the time given by the British representative was 10:30 a.m. Chart 376 is set for 10:30 a.m., the 3rd of September, 1783 in Paris, although the chart may be relocated for Philadelphia, the capital, at the same time, or Washington, the current capital. So this is the Paris chart. So here we have Scorpio as the rising sign. This is a Virgo sun, which we haven't talked about, a Virgo sun. So that's interesting. Pluto down here in Aquarius. And the moon down here in Scorpio, 29 degrees. So then this is the relocation. So it's the same, that chart was in Paris, and then this is the relocation of it to Washington, D.C. So because the location and the time are different, we have to run a different chart and see. So here we have Virgo now It's moved down right below the ascendant. So we have a Virgo ascendant and a Virgo sun now. And Uranus has now moved, I think it was in the 7th house. Now it's all the way in the 11th house in Cancer. And Pluto moved over to the 5th house in Aquarius. So moving on in the federal government, the federal constitution proved unsatisfactory. And on the 25th of May, 1787, a new constitutional convention opened. At 4 p.m. on the 17th of September, 1787, the new Union Constitution was approved and signed in Philadelphia. The first 9 states to ratify the federal constitution were Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, and New Hampshire. Now notice how long this took. I didn't read all the dates, but we started December 7th, 1787. Then we go the 12th of December, 18th, January 2nd, January 9th, February, April 28th, May 23rd, and then we end at New Hampshire, June 21st, 1788. So we see it took a lot longer than it would take nowadays. When New Hampshire ratified, the Constitution was placed in operation. On 2 July 1788, the Congress of Confederation accepted the new Constitution. And on 13 September 1788, it arranged for the new federal government to begin on the 4th of March 1788. So now we're talking about a new federal government. See how complicated it is figuring out which chart is the actual chart, and we're not even done. So according to Grant and Crom, the Constitution came into effect at 0 hours on the 4th of March in 1789 in Philadelphia, the capital. The new federal Congress met for the first time on the same day, although without a quorum. When the Constitution went into effect and the USA was established, only 12 of the Confederate states participated. Of the 13 rebel colonies, only Rhode Island retained its independence, refusing to ratify the Constitution until the 29th of May, 1790, after the U.S. Senate had passed a bill severing commercial relations. This is just fascinating, I find. So here is the chart of the federal Constitution. So we have up here the dates, September 17th, 1787, 4 p.m., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I've run all the charts in Placidus to follow Nicholas Campion's book of charts. So these are like exactly what you find in his book. So the federal Constitution we have now is a Aquarius rising sign, Sagittarius moon. And once again, we find we have the sun in Virgo. And we have again here in Cancer, we have Uranus, 6th house. So I'm not giving a reading on the charts. I'm just pointing out and showing everyone the differences of the charts and the times and the history here. So now we have the presidency is the chart when the president was sworn in. The whole process became complete with the swearing in of the first president, George Washington, on the 30th of April, 1789 in New York, the capital. Washington arrived at Federal Hall at 12:30 p.m., went straight inside, was introduced to Congress, and took the oath. If this chronology is correct, the swearing in would have taken place by 12:45 p.m., perhaps 12:40 p.m. This moment represents the final act in the creation of the United States of America out of 13 rebellious English colonies. 6 weeks later, on the 17th of June, the States General in Versailles took the first steps in the French Revolution. So I highlighted this here because what is the birth of something? Is it the signing of something? Is it the swearing in? There's all these questions involved. Was it when they voted on the Declaration of Independence? Was it a day nobody even knew about because they did it 2 days before, like on the 2nd? Was it the actual day we celebrate now as July, the 4th of July, Independence Day? Is it the Confederacy? You know, is it all these different things? Or is it the actual moment that President George Washington took oath? These are all things to consider. I personally like this chart that we're going to show next, which is the Taurus chart, because that's the actual moment in time, in history, that the president was sworn in as the leader of the United States of America, the free world. So here we have Leo is the ascendant. We have duplicated Leo and we have duplicated Aquarius. Anyhow, we have the sun is in Taurus. Saturn's down here in Pisces, and we have Pluto in Aquarius, 6th house. So I ask people when thinking about this to just, I made a video about the signs, but if you know the signs, just think to yourself what you believe the government is to you. Do you feel like the government is about money, materiality? Are we fixed in our ideas and our beliefs and what we do and how we represent our citizens and the world? That would be a Taurian kind of a country. Are we the Cancer chart here? This has the transits for the other day when I was putting this video together. But here we have a Cancer chart. Are we a feelings and emotion based country? You know, what do Cancers do? Do they withdraw and hide in their shells when you know, their feelings are hurt, or they are attacked? Now, are they, you know, they are compassionate towards everyone, but this is the government, the entirety, we the people, the government, you know, everything involved. So this is who we are as a country, and think how we're represented. Are we a Cancer? You know, are we this Sagittarius rising sign? Could be. I mean, I can look at truth in all of these different charts. So I'm just asking the people, when you're looking, pay close attention to the sun, because the sun is the spiritual life force of who we are. It's the life-giving, life-feeding energy of any country. So this is the Sibley chart again with the transits. So one of the reasons I'm pointing this out is because, you know, recently the world has been shifting and changing in many, many directions. And in America, a lot of astrologers that use the Sibley chart are talking about, or have been talking for years about, this Pluto return. So that means Pluto, when this chart was cast, was in 27 degrees Capricorn. And since 1776, it's traversed the entire zodiac and it's back within 2 degrees of its natal position. So this would be the house of banking and finance and things of that sort. So I wanted to leave you guys, because it would be the breaking down. Pluto would be the breaking down and disintegration. It's like the wrecking ball in a chart. It's because it has to break things down to rebuild it up. It's an evolutionary sign. So is that happening in America right now? Could be. Is the banking system totally broke and depleted? Could be so too. I don't know all the financial details in the government, but there's many, many things we could talk about with the Pluto return. I'm just going to leave it at that. And I want to finish this with a quote by an evolutionary astrologer, Jeffrey Wolf Green. He writes in his book, on a national level, it is interesting to remember that Pluto is in Capricorn in the US chart. The day will come when the United States will fall from grace. One day it will not be the world power that it is today. it will be one nation among many. This will force a restructuring of the soul, the national soul, so that a new collective self-image can evolve. The national sense of security linked with being a world power will have to change as a result of this evolutionary necessity. Is he right? Is that what's going on? Are we a totally different chart? We'll find out in the future, and I leave that up to all the viewers to put together. Maybe I'll do a video later on that. So anyway, thank you for watching my video. And if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for future notifications. And if you'd like to schedule an astrology reading with me, please visit www.astrologywithjeffreybryan.com. And thank you for listening. See you next time.